Good afternoon, folks. So, just going to do a quick recap, bit of a weekly reflection on my week. So week just passed. I took three trades, um, two winning trades and one losing trade. So over the three trades, it came out at plus 1.66% for the week. Let me just look here. So one of my trades was um based on taking the trade based on the daily, and two trades were based on the 60-minute chart. So kind of just going to break those trades down, and based on my weekly outlook, this is what I was sort of looking for, was if price can respect this support at max, this support and the support zone structure, and then potentially continue upside. But you could also argue that this daily candle that closed on, wait there, what day was it? Monday the 17th. Yeah, this is the weekly. God, I was thinking this was the daily candle. But yeah, you could argue that we've already seen the pullback. Price pushed up, pulled down, continued, so there could be just straight continuation. But my overall idea was basically, if we can remain within this zone, test the top end of the zone. So more so looking for buys, especially any pullbacks in the previous structure points and stuff like that. So just going to break down my trades that I took this week. I took two trades on Monday and one trade on Friday. I didn't trade Tuesday or Wednesday, or maybe Wednesday and Thursday, because I was holding a trade based on the daily chart from Monday. So I didn't want to. There was options to trade, especially during the session, but I just didn't want to maybe put myself in another trade within a trade and potentially counter that position where maybe taking a loss or something like that. So I just thought, you know what, I only need a handful of trades. I don't need to always trade. So I'm just gonna hold this trade or play this idea, because it's playing my overall idea, which is to sort of get up into this region. So I'll kind of just break that down. So on Monday, this is how price was looking leading into London session. I really like this candle alone. So the bias is mixed, but I'm asking myself, well, what makes more sense? In my opinion, buys. And what I was sort of looking at leading into London was, well, you've closed above this 4-hour resistance. Price is playing within this resistance zone from the body to the wick, but overall price has created a new target. So I was just looking at this as sort of like this. We have pulled back into this previous structure, failed to continue down, and now we're breaking above most recent resistance, and the aim is to push into here for a target. But obviously being aware that we are in a resistance zone, so even though we have clean traffic here, the idea was if we can close above like this, remain above, continue. So I just dropped down to the 1-hour chart. This is where I took my trade. So I'm just going to pull on my trades for the week. This is it here, and here. So this was the idea. This is 7 a.m. the 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. candle. So what I really liked was, again, we closed above 4-hour resistance. We then formed a resistance which closed below the 4-hour resistance, but then the 7 to 8 a.m. candle pushed down, failed to continue down after forming a resistance, and closed above not only the 4-hour resistance but also the 1-hour resistance that the previous candle formed. So my idea was, right, okay, play this continuation. I'm going to target up into the most recent resistance looking left, which is also the 4-hour target. And my management position of this trade was breaking below the support. I'm expecting to see continuation, so I don't want to see price can come down and react off the 1 hour and maybe push, or it might maybe come down as far as the 4 hour, or even come down to the support and push. But I'm sort of looking at this as well. This makes sense to see upside. We've already had the breakout, sort of pullback and close and continuation, so I'm expecting London Open to potentially open with volume. It is a time where we have seen, it is a time where the main volume is typically in and around London Open, so I was looking for a continuation. I have a 1-hour resistance in my favor as a buyer. I have a 4-hour resistance as a buyer. That's cool. So I'm happy to give this a shot. In my opinion, this option makes sense. I also have a way of managing the downside. So next candle, we actually close like this. So I actually close my position, full position on the break. Just looking at this on the 30-minute chart. Price came down, broke the sort of 30-minute support, and then closed bearish. I was thinking to myself here, when I closed here and price closed up here, I was thinking, well, is there maybe an option to re-enter? But I thought to myself, do you know what? It's not really worth it. I sort of understand why this trade maybe didn't play out, but at the same time, there still is the chance for price to push. But price then tanked to the downside. Volume coming in at 9 o'clock. I'm not entirely too sure if there was news on at 9 on the Friday. I think there might have been some Euro news, to be honest. Monday. What date was Monday? 17th. Nah, there wasn't any scheduled news really. So when I reflected back on this trade, from an improvement standpoint, I think taking buy options would have been much safer above the 4-hour resistance zone, because that would be above not only the resistance zone, but it'd be above the 1 hour as well. And one thing that stood out to me was this is the 4-hour resistance zone the price is playing within here, right? If I just draw this up, for instance, drop to the 1 hour, we also then, because this candle formed a resistance, this is a 1-hour resistance zone. So one thing that stood out to me was my entry candle, although it closed above the resistance, and it makes sense to continue, it is a high risk trade because I'm trading not only within a 4-hour resistance zone, but I'm also trading within the 1-hour resistance zone. So anywhere within here could pose a problem or reaction for potential downside. So that was one thing that I looked at. And then of course, if I'm looking at the 4-hour zone, where's the safest position to buy? Well, the safest position to buy would be right here, which is above the zone, and you're sort of buying away from the resistance. So reflecting back, that could have been an improvement to not trade within here. But I do understand why I did trade within there, because it made sense to me. But another thing would be was, well, if this candle closes 7 to 8, and I think that here is the safest position, what I could do is wait. And what that will allow me to do is it will allow me to see if volume comes into the market. Because this candle didn't even break the high of the 1 hour, which was my entry. It didn't even break the high of the higher support. So if this candle is opening here and I decide to enter here, I'll be able to see the volume come in. So if price just like pushes really quickly up, I know that when we break that, there's obviously a greater chance of continuation, because we're not only breaking away from the zones, but the main thing I'm paying attention to is I can actually see the volume. There's enough range here for me to actually visually see if there is going to be any sort of upside push. Whereas when I enter here on the close, I don't know if volume is going to open to the downside or to the upside. So that was definitely an improvement for me there to recognize where I'm trading, understand it's not the safest position, and then of course just maybe put myself in the safest position. Even though my trade made sense, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily mean that it is the best option. So that was that trade on Monday. Then I took a second trade on Monday, and this trade was taken based on the daily chart, and this trade was taken at, I believe, like 10 to 7 in the evening, and this was the option here. So when I entered here, it just so happened that this daily candle actually closed where I entered. If we drop down to the 1 hour chart, or let me just actually skip through a couple of hours. If we look at where this trade closed, let me go to the 1 hour, sorry. Yeah, so I actually entered here when this sort of candle was closing. I entered a position, and then we can see the next 3 hours price like broke above and then came back down 9 to 10 and closed where I entered. So it just so happened to be that my entry was the daily close. But the idea behind this trade was very simple. Based on my weekly outlook, I understand that price has closed within the zone. We have formed a resistance on Thursday. Friday's formed a higher support. Monday hasn't closed yet. However, when I seen this trade, we were breaking above the resistance of the previous daily that was on Thursday. We're also breaking above this daily resistance, and this is a form of higher support. So there is a possibility that this candle closes bearish, right? There's still 2 hours left of the day for the daily to close. But in my mind, I was thinking, we've already had our downside. We've respected the previous low. We're breaking up. We're breaking above this. We're breaking above this. I'm going to enter a buy here in anticipation that this daily candle is going to close bullish, which means it's going to confirm the support. I just looked at this as if it's a 30-minute chart, and the idea was for this candle to close above this daily resistance and this daily resistance, because the last thing I wanted was price to close below, and then I'm buying into these areas which could potentially be reactions to the downside. If I'm above price, or if I'm above these levels, if price wants to come down, it has to break through these four, and these levels can then act as support for potential upside. So that's how the daily candle closed. I'll just skip through one more day, and that's how the next daily candle finished. So again, like I just mentioned, price pulled down to the previous resistance zone, previous level of resistance here, and reacted, pushed to the upside. Looking at that on the daily, we have the open of Tuesday, where price just respected this higher support, and then we got the continuation in Asian session. Then London session offered a push. Price then just pulled back the previous structure before continuing to the upside. So when I looked at this on the, like, some might say, well, where I entered was buying on a 4-hour resistance, and that is completely, that's completely right. You might say, well, why did you enter at a resistance? But the idea is based on a daily time frame. The idea is based on price actually continuing through this, right? I'm not so worried about this 4-hour resistance. I'm more paying attention to this daily and this daily. I'm looking for price to close above it, and it did. I look at the structure on the 4-hour. 4 hours telling me it doesn't want to go down. We're forming price like this. Price is then pulled back into this previous structure. failed to continue down. It's then formed support, higher support, pushed up, pushed down, higher support again. Now this should be the continuation through. Obviously, if price closes below this support, it's going to remain in this range, and it's maybe not the best sign, but I'm expecting and visualizing continuation based on what I can already see. So I'm just going to sort of play this out on the daily. This was Tuesday. This was then Wednesday. And on Wednesday, there was some news. There was some CPI on Wednesday, which gave that initial push up during London. And when price was pushing up and price was up here, I just closed my full position. And the reason I closed the full position was because, let me just see if I have it on here. Yeah, so CPI on the 19th assisted in the push to the upside, and this is where I decided to close my full position. The reason for this is the position was returning almost 2%, and when price was up here, I was up about 1.6%. So for the sake of holding out for another 0.3, it didn't make sense to me. So I just closed the position. So if I just kind of minimize that, I just drop down, we can clearly see that prices create new structure within. Sort of have this structure point. Then price closes outside, forms that structure point. Price then continues, forms another structure point outside before continuing, so on and so forth. So I was just looking for price to continue structure and remain above. And because this trade's based on a daily time frame, it's based on something that makes sense to me. I'm looking for what, 160 plus pips to the upside, or I don't know, whatever it is, 180. It's going to need time to play out. It's going to need time to push through previous structure points. It's going to need time to break and continue, break and pull back the previous structure before continuation, and that's all I seen price do. As soon as we got above this resistance zone, all price has done is put in a new high, pull back into the zone to find support or continue. So that was the trade on Monday, and I held that through to Wednesday. So if I looked at the sessions and the opportunities on Tuesday, there is an option here to trade. So you can clearly see if I just hide this for a second. Here's an option on Tuesday at London Open. 7 to 8 candle closes a very strong bullish candle on the 1 hour, closes above resistance. Yes, it's within the zone, but this candle tells me that upside's expected because look at the size of it. Pricing pushes on London Open and continues. So that offered an opportunity, but I decided to pass on that because I was already in the opportunity on Monday and I didn't want to just add more positions and potentially ruin the overall idea. Like if I took a trade on Monday, then took 2 losses on say Tuesday and Wednesday, that might just cancel out the option on Monday, and I don't need to trade these days because I'm already in a position. The same thing happened on Wednesday. Prices pushed up into this 4 hour. Looking at the session bias leading into Wednesday, we have a bullish bias. We've completed this triangle here. Where makes, based on the 4 hour time frame, where does it make, if we're coming to the chart here, where does it make sense to buy from? Well, it's easy as saying, well, buy above the zone, right? I really like this option to buy above this 4 hour zone. And the reason being is because, yes, there is news on Wednesday, which is CPI. But if a candle closed here, and I have a 15 pip range, near enough 14-15 pip range until price breaks this point, I have 14 pips to see this candle movement. So if I think here's the safest position to buy, and I can see this candle forming and pushing and pushing and pushing, then all I could do is just put a buy there, put my stops below Asian range or below structure, and look to take that volume push. Where would you manage a trade? Well, come back inside Asian range or just break in below this 4-hour resistance. That's going to show us maybe a sign of rejection, because you're breaking back below the zone, but you're also breaking back below the resistance. So when I seen this option, well, I actually didn't see this option on at the time, because I decided on Wednesday, you know what, I'm not going to trade. And I was just kind of like looking to see what the news was doing, and when it started to push, I was like, happy days. That's helping the trade that I took on Monday, complete this overall idea. But looking back on the session, definitely was an option to potentially trade this, like on a very simplistic, easy way. But I opted just to hold the original trade from Monday. So when I come out of that position, I come out of it up here. I just closed the full position, so that was that. And then price started to come down and range about. And the last trade I took then was on Friday. So this was the session leading into Thursday. Nothing that really tickled my fancy, but there was the option there to trade down into this previous area. Let me actually see, did I trade Thursday or Friday? I think that might have been actually Thursday's option. Yeah, it was. So yeah, sorry, the last trade I took was Thursday, not actually Friday. I didn't trade Friday because I took the trade the day before on Thursday, and just kind of ended my week there. So the sell on the Thursday was a short position, and the idea again was based on the 1 hour. Coming into the session, I didn't like the idea of buying, because if we're opening up here, I don't want to buy into this resistance. I know there's an already resistance zone above. I also understand the price has pushed so much to the upside before, so I wasn't really keen on buying unless there was like some sort of maybe break, a target form, pull back to these levels, and then price failing to continue down and pushing up. But when I looked at the hourly chart, sales made a lot of sense to me. Basically all I done was looked at this structure here, got this range. We failed to continue up and start to break down below this hourly zone. There's clean candles here down into this hourly support. So I played this idea of the 4 hour, or sorry, off the 1 hour, aiming to take opportunities below here to trade to here. But I also was aware that there's a 4 hour support in here, which is the first contact point before my target. So what I done was I made the decision to close my position here for 0.5%. And that was solely just on the basis that I took a loss on Monday. I then took a win. So I'm sitting around over 1% for the week so far. And I said to myself, this is a quick and easy 0.5%, just bank it and be done. And that's what I done. So that's where I find I'm sort of finding that balance between trading what makes sense and trading to a target and allowing my analysis to play out, but also recognizing and being sensible when it comes to closing positions. And this just made a lot of sense to me because there was heavy news on Friday and I wasn't planning on trading Friday. So I was like, I can take this quick trade here and that's me done. So I took this trade based on the 1 hour chart. Stop position was above the resistance, and I could see this candle building. So the way I took this trade was when this RD candle closed below, I sort of treated this as my confirmation candle. I could have entered on this candle, but price opened and started to push up, and as soon as it started rejecting the wick, I just sold. And I just said to myself, I'm sort of getting a bit of a better entry at a better price, because down at this point is where I would have initially sold anyway based on this candle. And the idea was just solely breaking down below the support, which is holding all this up, clean candles down into here, or at least to the 4 hour. And that's exactly what happened. So price then just pushed the target with that candle, and I closed out here. So, you know, looking at this trade, there was definitely improvements to be made. Solely just on the 1 hour chart, I could have had a tighter stop below either this candle, which confirmed the resistance, or maybe even into Asian range. My idea for management of this position was, as soon as we start to come back into Asian range, I'm going to close. That's going to cut the trade at 0.5%. I'm going to lose less than I set it to lose, which is grand. That means that price is also above the zone, also above the 1 hour support. So from a downside perspective, if price is breaking here and then coming back above, not only above this, but it's above this, it's then above this, it's not a good sign, because if price starts to push down again, there is a chance that it could react anywhere within the zone for then potentially upside. So that was my 3 positions this week. 3 trades, 2 off the 60-minute chart, 1 based off the daily, as the daily candle was open, and I come out for a total gain of the week of 1.66%. So happy enough with that, and can sort of just bring that in next week and see how we get on. But yeah, that's my 3 trades for the week. That's my weekly reflection, and I'll sort of get a video uploaded in relation to my outlook, and that sort of stuff. So I'll get this posted in the community and stuff. So cheers.